Hello, my name's Elijah Wells, and today's review is Michael Sarnowski's new movie, A Quiet Place, Day One. The movie follows Sam, played by Lupita Nyong'o, who's a former poet and terminally ill patient who, during the very first day of the alien invasion, was visiting a marionette show until the aliens start to invade, and she, before the evacuation, has other priorities like getting food and as well as getting her medication. Along the way, she meets Eric, played by Joseph Quinn, who's an English law student who's also struggling to get out of Manhattan after all access out of Manhattan has been completely cut off to prevent the spread of the aliens invading. This being the first film about John Krasinski as a director at the helm. In this case, it's done by Michael Skonsky. If I mispronounced his name, then I do truly apologize. Who is best known for his 2021 independent horror film Pig, which is starring Nicolas Cage. And of course, after the indie success that it was, he was approached to do Quiet Place Day One without, of course, John Krasinski directing it, as he is directing It, which came out a couple of months ago, and of course is directing the third and apparently the final film of the Quiet Place trilogy. Well, in this instance, it was going to be a very interesting case because the only major character from any of the previous two films was Henry, played by Dwayne Johnson, who's basically a survivor from the second film, and he does pop up only around 5 or so minutes in this movie. And of course, the anticipation was definitely through the roof. Like the other films, the budget, like the other films progressing, like the film's budget was of course a lot bigger than the previous two, and of course the anticipation, particularly being a different Quiet Place, as it's the first one without Emily Blunt or Joseph Kavinsky and the three kids. So it was going to be very interesting of how they're going to do it with completely new people and a completely new setting, as in it's going to be set in New York, essentially one of the loudest cities in the world, or just a city that's just loud by default. Lupita Nyong'o, who already has built up some major experience in horror movies like Little Monsters and Us, directed by Jordan Peele, and in this movie where she plays a terminally ill former poet who pretty much has other more somewhat serious priorities like getting food and getting medication, while an alien invasion is completely going down all around her. Her performance in this movie, particularly in the jazz club scene, particularly in that scene with Joseph Quinn, as both eat pizza and both play around with cards and she listens to music in quiet, which is again something that really showcased the more human side of being essentially being a human, while aliens are completely conquering the world around you and having a little bit of humanity left inside yourself and with a close mate of yours, which is again showcases an incredible performance like he does in this movie. Of course, Joseph Quinn does, even though he does pop up roughly around 1/3 or halfway into the movie, he does make the most of the movie he has. Like, he is absolutely, again, really good in this movie, again, in my opinion as well. Even though The Quiet Place is often very well known for its striking imagery and its very intriguing concept of the aliens who have a really acute sense of hearing and will kill you if you make any like really loud or really sudden noises, but for this instance, when it comes to visual imagery, it does borrow from a lot, like the director said, borrows a lot from the movie Children of Men by Alfonso Cuarón, and also, I'm not sure if this was incredibly intentional or not, but it does borrow quite a lot of imagery from when September 11 happened and the complete pandemonium that went down and the absolute horror and chaos that was inflicted on the city on that very day, and also COVID-19, particularly even though the series was released before at that time, particularly in scenes where the city just went quiet and it looked completely abandoned and very few people were walking around. It almost reminds me of these two almost notorious atrocities that were inflicted on New York on these two separate occasions. Both, of course, happened between 20 years apart from each other, and how, of course, the movie does combine these two horrifying events and how they were reflected on New York, which is something I found deeply intriguing if the director admits to using that imagery or not, but I thought that was somewhat of a very interesting course of action he took. And the movie's effects, again, with using the movie's added budget as a massive bonus for this movie, we do see a lot more of a threat from the monsters than usual, and we do see a lot more of the monsters, of course. Like, I'm not sure if the logic was that the bigger city, as in more aliens, because in the previous two movies we only got to see like only a couple of aliens at best total, which was again kept the threat level really sustained throughout the entirety of these two films. But again, the threat level is is definitely a lot bigger in my opinion because there are a lot more monsters. But I'm not sure if it's a logic of bigger popular density equals more monsters, or it's just they're just randomly spread across the world, regardless of like population density, which is again. I'm not sure if they're going to completely answer that question in the third film, but it's definitely going to be interesting how they will discuss it in the third film again. And of course, in the one of the scenes where the monsters start chasing you after a helicopter is doing an announcement of stay inside and stay quiet until services would come to rescue you, you see like an absolute avalanche and an absolute stampede of aliens. Like, I have encountered that was like 20, 50 or something 30, like aliens just like ran down this tiny street or this tiny avenue, like just absolutely running around like wild stray dogs. Like it was like they feel a lot more terrifying as a massive pack of aliens. However, despite of the praise I've given the film so far, there are some qualms I've already had with this movie already. As in the trailer, there is that one line there that says there'll be no more people, no more days, and no more New York, or something that goes along that lines, which does feature in the trailer, as well as the shot of like two men at her apartment. It's not even in the movie for some reason, because that would be very interesting, because that felt particularly damning for this movie, probably the most damning line, or something that essentially would describe the series as it is. Like, it's probably so nihilistic of viewpoint of what will happen on day one of an apocalypse. But again, that is something I wish would have been kept in the movie. But there was also that one shot of the two characters that were in what looked like a cafe, but she was like pointing to a map to Lower Manhattan. That wasn't in the movie, unfortunately. But also, there was another scene that wasn't there, but didn't end up in the movie. Is the old man who was the owner of the Marionette Theatre, who turned off the backup generator that was creating noise, then ended up being killed by an alien. Unfortunately, it ended up being one of the nurses of Sam's who turned off the generator, then got killed by the aliens in the movie, which again really sucks again, but. Again, it's a little bit interesting in my opinion, because I wonder if this was like studio interference or a complete change of mind, or they shot both scenes, which one they want to go with, or probably runtime issues, even though the movie does go on for a somewhat breezy an hour and a half, so I might just have to take it while I will. And also the other thing is, when I talk about Sam's priorities, her number one priority is get pizza from Patsy's, which is a pizza joint from Harlem, which again, okay, there's an alien invasion that will kill you if you make sounds, and your biggest priority outside getting medication is getting pizza from Patsy's. Like, I understand, like, if the world ends, you always want to try it, but really, now, like, I think at this point it's not safe to do it. I don't think it's even salvageable to do that at that point. Which is, again, a little bit weird, and a little bit of a weird subplot, like, I want to go out to get pizza, like, in a apocalypse, like, really? Although this is definitely a crowd-pleasing prequel and spin-off, and definitely does give us some time to get ourselves adjusted for what may come next of Quiet Place, when the third film rolls around next year or in 2026. But it is a very strong and pretty interesting movie in my opinion. Lupita Nyong'o and of course Jessica Quinn give out some great performances. Michael Straczynski does really stand out now as a really big mainstream horror director from his indie roots with Pig. And also, this franchise is already still in good hands, even with John Krasinski still not in director or nowhere to be found in the movie at all. Again, this is a very intricate and very imagery film, more than imageal film in my opinion, particularly pulling from like Children of Men as well as real atrocities that New York had to go through, like September 11 or the COVID-19 pandemic. Again, I would definitely count these two horrible atrocities. It definitely does calculate itself well in this movie as well. Again, the absolute sheer frighteningness nature and the sheer terror of the aliens is definitely at full force, and we do see more aliens, more terror. So, for Quiet Place Day 1, I'm feeling a 7 out of 10. So, what do you think of Quiet Place Day 1? Let me know in the comments, like this video, subscribe to my channel, follow me on Twitter and Instagram and Letterboxd, and this is Elijah Wells, and bye!